What I learned about freedom from a 2x2 Venezuelan prison cellThis became painfully clear to me while I was imprisoned for political opposition to President Nicolás Maduro's dictatorship. In a 2x2-meter cell with a lock the size of a brick, I learned what freedom was when I didn't have it. The Venezuela I was born into in the 1970s was considered the envy of the Americas, a country with a strong economy capable of providing prosperity and opportunities to almost everybody. Venezuelan leaders had successfully built this regime of freedom after the downfall of Marcos Pérez Jiménez's military dictatorship in 1958. Between the 1960s and 1990s, Venezuela was the democratic exception in Latin America, a title that every Venezuelan carried with pride. Now, 22 years after Hugo Chávez's presidency began and nearly a decade after Maduro seized power in what I believe was a fraudulent 2013 presidential election, Venezuela is undergoing the worst multi-layered crisis in the continent. Poverty, violence, starvation, and shortages of crucial supplies are the new normal. A 2016 survey found that almost three-quarters of the population involuntarily lost an average of 19 pounds, with emergency rooms overwhelmed by cases of severely malnourished children.
How did we turn from being an island of democracy to a broken dictatorship? I think the answer is twofold. First, we suffered an erosion of the essential elements of democracy. After becoming president in 1999, within a year, Chávez changed the national constitution and called for a mega-election that saw him inaugurated for a 6-year term. He changed the political structure of the country, packed the Supreme Court, took control over the National Electoral Council, and labelled critical members of the free press as enemies of the homeland. Second, this democratic erosion was met with an immoral neutrality from democracies around the world. When we the Venezuelans were losing our freedoms, too many people in the region believed that our problem was not also their own. I witnessed this tragedy from my position as a local politician. After studying abroad in the US in the early 1990s, I returned to Venezuela and ran for public office in 2000. I was elected and re-elected as mayor of Chacao, a powerful municipality in Caracas that is home to almost 80,000 people. For 8 years, we proved that it was possible to serve democratically in a country being led in the opposite direction. Unable to serve, I visited towns and cities across the country, from the Colombian border to the Atlantic coast. I wanted to prove that it wasn't necessary to be an elected authority to serve our people. What I saw on that journey were Venezuelans who were more than ready to fight for freedom and democracy. That experience led me, along with other democratic leaders, to establish the political party Voluntad Popular, a national movement steeped in grassroots activism. When Chávez's successor, Maduro, rose to power in 2013, I asked our movement, are we living in a democracy or a dictatorship? We agreed on the latter. Inspired by non-violent resistance from around the world, including the Orange Revolution, the Arab Spring, and US civil rights movements, we chose to peacefully protest Maduro's regime. The Venezuelan government's response to our demonstrations was ruthless, and strikingly similar to what we have seen reported from the streets of countries around the world, from Belarus to Nicaragua: police brutality against peaceful protesters, arbitrary arrests and torture of opposition leaders, protesters sent into exile and some killed, as the UN has documented. Many ask why Maduro is still in power, despite massive and ongoing protests. The truth is that he's in power because he's a dictator, and his regime's response has been the same as others: repression and incarceration, the dictator's recipe to hold on to power. Perhaps we need to understand that authoritarianism is a global phenomenon. Dictators, in fact, understand this very well. They form political allegiances to protect each other internationally and have developed a transnational repression policy in order to persecute those who oppose them. This is a global problem, and its solution should be global as well. To achieve democratic change in Venezuela, we must be part of a larger, globally organized effort. This idea is what convinced me to risk my life to escape from my country last year to resettle in Spain, a desire to be part of an international front that would help not only the people of Venezuela, but all those who live under authoritarian regimes.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe